Okay, hello everyone. This is the Heather Godby podcast, and today we have an extraordinary guest that I am so pleased to welcome to the set here. Johnna, hi.
Hello, hi.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Now, the word on the street is that you are an expert in many things.
Oh boy.
But today we're going to be talking about trauma therapy. Now, my background has a lot of different trauma. We're not going to go there quite yet, but I do want to give a quick rundown for the audience of what expertise that you are in. What's your whole deal here?
Yeah. So I have been a counselor for 7 years now, and this is my third year now starting my own business focusing solely on trauma survivors. So that's kind of the gig. My business is Dear Self Trauma Therapy.
God, I love that. I love that. You know, when I looked at your socials, I just fell in love because there's such a organic kind of out-of-the-box approach that you have. Mm-hmm. And when you think about trauma and you think about therapy, at least for me, I tend to shy away from anything with the word therapy in it.
Yeah. You and everybody else, by the way.
Really?
Yes.
Is that like a thing? Is that like a trigger?
It's a trigger for sure.
I wonder why that is.
Well, so traditionally therapy, we were taught be like this. Don't give any facial expression. Pretend like you're not even a human. Leave your values at the door. You know, it's so awkward and impossible because we're human, right? So that just didn't work for people.
I love that you just said that. And I love it for a reason that I just learned about myself. When I started thinking about my past and my childhood and just all the different things, I started to realize that my trauma wasn't specific to one thing. It's not like I had a trauma of, I just had really poor parents that just didn't pay attention to me. It wasn't that I was abused. It wasn't that I was, the bigger things that you would expect to hear from trauma. And what I learned about myself was that the trauma could come from the instability of just not knowing. So my parents got divorced when I was young, and, there was fighting involved. And back when I was growing up, there were a lot of things that didn't match who I was as a person, like that strict in a box. Yeah. And so it was very traumatizing for me to try to, number one, stay in a box and try to make my parents, teachers, whoever it was in my life, proud of me because I was everything opposite of that. And so I was learning that the trauma piece actually came from having these boundaries that I, as a soul, as a human, could not understand why it felt so lonely and so it just was dark.
Yeah.
It's dark. And so my question to you, like the different traumas and your expertise in being a counselor, do you normally see guests that have had trauma that is very specific, or do you get like a plethora of trauma that could be because of the person you are and you're growing up in an environment that doesn't necessarily fit who you are?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you're naming it because trauma doesn't fit into a pretty little box.
And you know what? I always thought it did.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's so common because first we only thought trauma was like PTSD from, veterans coming back from war. That was all trauma was. And it was like, well, I didn't have that, so I didn't have trauma.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, that, again, you're just nailing it. Okay. I think I even told my PR team that I don't even know if I'm qualified really to talk about trauma because you start gaslighting yourself of like, was that really that bad? Because I've heard stories, I've seen stories of where it's so much more than what I ever went through. Yeah. And it's weird, not all of it happens at the same time. I think, again, a lot of it was just being sporadic in, divorce I think is a big thing, but it's not, in my mind, it's not the biggest thing.
Right.
But the trauma part for me was not seeing my mom. I didn't see my mom for 2 years.
Yeah.
The trauma part was, for me, was having to do the dishes at 6 years old,
Right.
or making my own food, or going to school with my hair not brushed, socks
Right.
that didn't match,
Right.
dirty clothes. And my parents were awesome. Just back then was a different time. It was a
Yeah.
different time, you know, and I don't want to make it about that. I think, again, trauma comes from several different areas of your life, and I'm just now unwrapping what that means to me. I'm still not even there.
Yeah.
And so as you start to, I guess, unwrap trauma from people that you're working with,
Mm-hmm.
where do you start?
Mm-hmm.
What do you ask? Like, how do you put the pieces together for
Yeah.
them?
Well, and even before that, do you notice how just as you were describing that, it became like a comparing,
Oh
like,
my gosh.
right? It's like trauma becomes this comparison contest.
It does.
Right?
Or I'm like the lack there. Like, I don't want somebody to listen to my story and then they compare it to mine, because I'm not here to compare. I'm just here to share.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's like the nature of trauma, you know?
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'm like, ditch the word. Like that word comes with so much baggage.
Yes.
Right? Like ditch the word. We've all been through hard things that have a lasting effect on us.
Yeah.
You know, that's it. That's all trauma is.
I was even thinking about those that may have grown up in very wealthy, well-off, how do I say this? Conventional ways of growing up. But there could be a lot of trauma there because of the expectations. Because then I started putting myself in their shoes of like, even if I had all the things, the money, my parents being under one roof for, you know, until the end of time.
Right.
Would I still be happy if I still had the same circumstances, like the same weight of who I was supposed to be?
Yes.
And no, I'd be miserable. In fact, I might even be more miserable because the expectations and the weight of that would probably bury me.
Right.
So I'm kind of curious. How did you get into this?
Trauma, of course.
Like, were you thinking like, man, I went through some stuff and I really, was it to analyze and understand yourself more?
So my kind of moment was, so when I was, you know, younger, about 8 years old, my parents had a messy divorce also, and it was a domestic violence home. And what they decided was that all the kids, so me and my two brothers, had to go to court-ordered counseling. Because, you know, my parents are doing some just interesting things. And so they sent us to counselor after counselor after counselor. And I was in one session, I was 8, and she was like, I want you to draw out in the sand tray how you're feeling. So I, you know, get this little sand tray, and I draw this track, and I put me on the track. And I said, it doesn't matter if I speed up, slow down, or stop completely. It feels like I can't get off this track.
Oh, that gave me chills.
Yeah, that's
It's
how
so
it
relatable.
felt in my life, right? And this counselor stared at me. No words, no empathy, nothing. Like, I'm sorry, none of that. Like, how hard would something have been was my mind. And I was like, that's it. Like, I'm going to do this job and I'm going to do it better, because that felt so bad. It just stuck with me.
Wow. It's incredible how these little moments, something like that.
Yeah.
And someone in that power really, I think that this is good for even counselors to, I always say lead by example, and you're doing that. And I think anyone that's trying to help someone else, especially when you're in that position, that is your job.
Right.
And you're helping children nonetheless, a very innocent being,
Yeah.
soul,
Right.
confused, just
Most vulnerable population.
vulnerable.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes. You have to be, there has to be passion there, or else, and there also, I feel like, has to be experience too, because to me, that would further the damage. That would further isolate me.
Right.
Further put me down the path of, I'm not normal. Am I normal? Or is this like, am I just destined to be feeling dark inside all the time?
What's wrong with me, right?
Exactly.
That's the narrative.
Yes.
Nobody gets me, right? Parents don't get me. Teachers don't get me. Now this counselor doesn't even get me. Her job is to get me, and she can't even get me.
And how can you say that when, as a child, you're not really understanding that you're not getting yourself? Like, you don't know yourself enough to know what's real, what isn't, and it's so sad. I feel like children really need to live in a dreamlike fairy tale. They lose that immediately, like after 3, 4, and it's, and it's so hard to break. This is my biggest struggle with my son is making sure he's prepared enough for what's to come in life, because life isn't supposed to be easy. You're supposed to learn. I really do, because I think that the traumas really do help, or whatever experiences help mold you into who you are, and you're given a gift to either do something good with that or not.
Yeah.
But that's hard for me with parenting my son, because I want him to live in a fairy tale, but I also don't want him to get hurt.
Yeah.
So it's almost like trying to teach somebody how to, I'm a big believer in manifestation.
Mm-hmm.
So like I always want him to create the best feelings inside of himself, so then it can develop.
Yeah. Yeah.
But how do you do that if you don't know yourself? And so he still has to go through the motions, I guess, of growing up.
Yeah.
You're a mother,
Mm-hmm.
and your daughter is 6.
She's 6, but she would like me to say that she's 6 3/4. Because next month she's 7, and she specifically asked me to say that. So,
oh my gosh, she is so cute.
Almost 7.
Oh my gosh. So what's her personality like?
Oh my gosh, she is a hoot. She is just full of life. She's awesome. Singing, dancing, living life. It's amazing.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself comparing how you grew up in a very unstable situation? How do you take that and bring it to your parenting? And how would you actually, that plus part 2, what are the foundation, maybe the top 3 foundational things? Doesn't need to be, you can give me 1, you can give me 6, I don't care, whatever you want. What would you say to be aware of, or maybe top of mind for parents trying to parent for the first time coming out of trauma?
Yeah. As you say that, I think of like breaking generational trauma patterns.
Yes.
Right. And, I didn't have any models of healthy parenting. I had my daughter at 22. There was no demonstration of like, oh, I'm going to model this family. I had nothing. I knew I didn't want it to be like my family or, my house. And so what I did was I read 7 parenting books before she turned 2. I'm like, okay, that'll get me at least to like, elementary years.
Yes.
I just have to learn these like beginning years. And that was really helpful. And then I started watching like webinars and, reading different things and talking to people about this. And I just tried to gather information of like what healthy looked like, and what resonated with me.
That's the word, what resonated. Mm-hmm. That's what I relate with what resonated, because I didn't learn this right away. In fact, in my last episode, I was very clear about missing out on a big part of my son's 1 through 3 years.
Yeah.
And so I did the opposite of what you did. You were proactive. I used escapism.
Sure.
I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And, it grew into this big ball of feeling even more trapped than what I was already feeling in my own childhood up until raising a child myself.
Yeah.
So I think that different people, it's going to come down to what works for you.
Yes.
Because here we are. We're 2 people coming with a very traumatized background in a sense, and and approaching it 2 different ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not having a realization of what it should look like.
Yeah.
And what should it look like?
And what is that?
Yeah. What is that?
No clue. No clue.
Like, I feel like if you have the foundation of just being loving, caring, open-minded, letting your children be exactly who they need to be, I feel like the biggest part for me is having even friends, family, anybody that comes to me for advice is not answering the question for them, of asking questions for them to figure out what their internal system is saying. Because how many times do you think people say, what they think they're supposed to say.
Right.
Like what it feels right for society.
Yeah.
Or
Get the right answer.
yeah, get the right answer.
Yeah, to please.
And there's got to be a freedom of just breaking away from that. So
Yeah.
are there methods that you would recommend for anyone, really, parent, not parent, anyone, to just free themselves, free the mental prison?
Such a good question.
I want to know for myself. But
the first thing that comes to mind is when it comes to parenting is like the greatest gift we can give our kids is to work on ourselves.
Bingo. Wow.
Yeah.
That's something so simple.
Yes. And I learned that pretty early on because, everybody wants to like teach their kids stuff. Let me teach you this and teach you that. And like, what if we kind of just gave up on teaching a little bit, and just like modeled and showed them what healthy looks like, what setting boundaries looks like, what taking care of yourself looks like.
Oh my gosh. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with you. That is it. That is it.
Right. Like, why are we teaching, or like the parents were well-intended, but it's like forcing their kids to go apologize or say sorry. Kid doesn't feel sorry. So now we're forcing them to say something they don't even feel.
Wow. Oh, I just got chills again. I have a feeling it's going to be a lot of those.
Embrace the chills.
Wow. Okay. So that is so unique because I haven't heard that before. Again, I think, yes, leading by example, I think is one of the easiest, simplest terms or advice you can give, but probably uniquely one of the hardest things people will do.
Yeah. Actually do.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
And it comes up so much because it's every hot topic, my kids are watching too much TV, they're too much electronics. Well, are you watching TV? Is it on all the time?
Yes.
Do they see that? Are you doing that at night when you come to bed? Like, what are we doing?
Gosh.
Let's look maybe inward for a minute and like less at them.
That resonates so well because I can be in the best mood a lot of the time. And then, one thing could set me off. And I am just like, my son is just used to me being like, sorry, it was just a 60-second mood. Like, and I started thinking, because it just bothers me if I can't correct it with my son of like letting him know what led me to that.
Yeah.
And it bothers me when I can't control it myself. But I also noticed that I want to say like 3 or 4 years ago, I would be one of those parents that would tell my son, even still now, sometimes I do it, don't come around me with that bad mood. I'm telling him not to, but I'm here storming the house. Like when I have a bad mood, I'm allowed to have a bad mood.
Right.
I'm allowed to do these things, but here I am telling this. And even when they're little, it's the hardest.
Yeah.
Because you're really teaching them in the patience. Oh my gosh, the patience it takes. But little things like leading by example that triggers those emotions, like anything, yelling obviously triggers a very fearful, little dark, and I was raised in that.
Yeah.
So a lot of that comes out at times when I'm triggered and don't have the patience to digest it.
Yeah.
And so I started really trying to stop myself before overreacting, even with like road rage or anything like that. I swear I'm not like a crazy well, I mean, whatever. The definition of the word could be multiple things. But okay, I'm a human, okay? Aren't we all crazy? But like even like that and setting the example for my son of like don't be in a bad mood and never cuss. And then here I am like, just leading by the worst example.
Right.
But then turning around, it's almost like gaslighting or being a hypocrite in front of my son.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I had to put some ownness there.
Yeah. You got to really kind of own those moments.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
It is so hard to stop yourself. And I noticed that with even arguing with people too. It's like, why don't I do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? That's one quote that I play in my head all the time. And it's like, I'd rather be happy. So I'm going to leave this situation. I'll leave them with their rage or whatever their issue is.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take my happy self home, you know?
Yeah.
And that's helped a lot.
Yeah.
But it's not easy.
No. And, even when we like have these rage moments or, we start cussing or whatever it is, I love those moments because it shows, wow, I'm human.
Yes.
Hey, let's repair. We can be like, hey, I was really upset and I said this and, I shouldn't have said that.
Yes.
I'm sorry, bud. Right? Or whatever it is, let's just own our stuff.
Own it.
Right? Repair if we need to repair the relationship with the kid, but we're not trying to model perfection. We're human.
And I always say this, like, how boring would perfect be? I don't want a perfect man. I don't want a perfect child. Like, in fact, I would be on, well, okay, half the time my son's yelling at me because I'm like the immature one around. But, like that is so boring to me. And again, perfect, these are words that we can throw around, but everybody has their own unique definition of what that means to them.
Yeah.
So really, what are we comparing with?
Right.
Now, trauma. Let's get back to trauma and how that can shape your life if you don't identify what that looks like. I mean, I for the longest time didn't even know I was so broken in ways it wasn't talked about.
Yeah.
It could be depression at an early age. And I think I came out of the womb depressed. I don't know what that was.
Yeah.
But I swear, I just feel like, because I'm thinking about things that could have turned me into a depressive or anxiety-ridden child. But none of the things that I could think of made me that way. I really feel like I was just born a super empath. And so I would absorb those energies and hold it within.
Yeah.
And you can't fix everyone,
Right.
Do you think a lot of trauma, people that have gone through trauma, do you think that, well, I think there's two, but do you think they're mostly fixers? You think they want to help people? Or do you think they want to hurt people? I know that there's probably both.
Yeah. I'm sure there's both. But depending on where we're at, like you're describing how, like, I didn't even know it was trauma, right? That's so common. Like we first have to become aware of it and accept how this stuff we've been through is affecting us. I mean, I'm literally a trauma therapist, and probably about 5 years ago is when I discovered I had trauma.
Wow. Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? That's what trauma does.
Wow.
So I just want to like name and normalize that for, you and everybody listening, that we know when we know. Like when it hits us, but there's no shame on how long that takes.
Why do you think we're so scared to say it out loud?
For me and a lot of other people with like the childhood stuff, it was easier to think that I was the problem and not my parents or my situation or my home, because we're a kid.
Yeah.
Right? I can't think that my caregivers are unsafe, because then what do I have? I have nothing. I can't go anywhere. I'm stuck. So therefore, this isn't the problem. I'm the problem.
That is so crazy. Oh, it gives me like kind of anxiety because I put myself in like, my childhood self, like thinking about not being able to escape my own. Just that feeling. I don't know how else to describe it. We can call it many different things, the trauma, the being scared, the fear. But really, it's just that dark feeling. It could be a ball of whatever that is. Because sometimes I don't know the difference. I mean, scared is fear. Fear is being, it could be anything. And so for me, getting really deep into the core of what and why I was feeling those dark emotions has helped, but I also resist going there so much because I don't want to, you just don't want to.
Yeah. It's not fun.
It's just not.
It's
and so
work.
Do you or have you done any research into children mainly that have grown up with trauma and their ability to go in the past and remember things in chronological order, one, the time it happened, number two, because I'm 40 and I'm still getting blips of like, oh my God, that happened. Oh my gosh, I must have felt this way. Or what was that? Or, you know, and it's when I'm asked about my past, nothing shuts me down faster. I cannot list it out. I can't even put a full sentence as to what that means in chronological order of how I grew up.
Right. And that is common. I see it as like we get a different like piece of a jigsaw puzzle, one day, and I got this piece. I still don't have a picture, but I got a few pieces here, a few pieces here, because trauma is not neat. It's not in that box. I couldn't give you a chronological time order of how old I was and where I was when this happened.
So you can't either?
No.
Wow. Okay. So this is probably, it's more, the percentage is higher not to remember these things.
Or it's just you remember but differently, right? Trauma comes back as like reactions, not necessarily memories.
Interesting. I've never heard it said like that.
Mm-hmm. And so it's like, I know I hate this thing. I don't know why, right? But then you'll get maybe insight another day of like, oh, I remember when mom did that.
Or even I think back going to my small town and something just obliterates my insides. Like I don't want to go back there, but I love it's so beautiful. I love like memories of me sitting on a rock with the trees, like high up in a mountain and by myself writing some, I don't know, really dramatic poetry at the time. That'd be really embarrassing when I pulled up these days. But I'm going to do it if I find it.
Stay tuned.
Yes, stay tuned. But I'm always just curious. Okay, why our brains don't allow us to do that?
Yeah, well, that one is more simple because neurologically, when we are going through trauma, we go through that fight, flight, freeze. I'm sure you've heard before. But when we freeze, our brain literally shuts down. Our bodies shut down. We mimic that like dead state. Digestion slows. It's almost like we're dead. Have you seen like when animals do that, right?
Yes,
when they play dead? Shock, yes. And we do that. And it keeps us safe. It's protective.
Wow. So our minds now, I mean, I've heard this, but I've never really gotten to the science of it.
Yeah.
Of why it obviously protecting, but our minds and our brains are pretty spectacular if it can do that.
Yeah. And I mean, our bodies are incredible. Like to keep us safe like that, it's amazing.
They say that your cells, though, every cell in your body learns those traumas. And I think that's what can carry through in ailments, illnesses, if you don't. So I think that there's a health aspect to it too. If you don't deal with your trauma, not only mentally will it probably put you on the decline, but your body's going to suffer. It harbors. And I never understood that.
Yes.
Until I had a few jobs where I was really stressed out, and then I would get really sick with abnormal things.
Yes. And so I love this topic. That's what got me into a lot of trauma.
Oh, let's go. Let's go.
Right? Because so I got certified in somatic experiencing. And basically it's exactly what you're describing is we hold emotions in our bodies. It's trapped in there, right? So trauma lives in the body.
How do you talk to somebody that just won't believe it?
They'll feel it.
They will feel it.
Maybe I've got migraines all the time, or I have this weird pain in my back that doctors can't explain, or there's a series of symptoms that don't make sense to doctors. And those are kind of the people who walk into my office.
Yes.
Right? Can you help? Nobody knows what's wrong with me.
This is so neuroscience. I freaking love it because your brain and your body are all one unit, and it all talks to each other.
Yes, which we're finally realizing, right, that they are connected, the mind-body connection. But this is what happens is it's all stored in there, right? And we have to process it. But people who go to traditional talk therapy, it doesn't work.
Okay, so what's the difference? Why would that not work?
Yeah, and so I'm not hating on talk therapy. There's so much value in it, and I love it. But for the people who have trauma in their body, it only gets them so far because talk therapy is all about working with the thoughts, right? Changing our thoughts, and then working our way down. But you can't talk yourself into feeling safe.
That is so wild. Yeah, it's almost like Band-Aiding the situation.
Yeah, I could list positive affirmations all day long. If I've got PTSD, sure as shit, it's not going to do anything.
Yes.
I'm going to walk in and have a reaction to whatever the thing is.
And how do you help people heal from that?
So basically, when they come in for the trauma therapy, it's more of that bottom-up approach, which is body, then thoughts. It's body-based because they already feel.
This is incredible.
Yeah, they've already got the feelings, the sensation. They're in pain. They already can feel. right? And we work with what the body shows, and then we'll get to the thoughts.
Wow, it just, there's a part of me that like wants to squeeze a ball right now because there are so many people that are probably suffering that won't link this, won't link the two of I'm feeling this way instead of seeing 10 doctors, 10 therapists, 10 numerous other, what's the word I'm looking for? Any kind of healing.
Yeah.
Whether that's medical or mental,
Yeah.
how do they connect the bridge? Because it's not talked about a lot.
That's right. But more. We're growing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's incredible. And can you explain, because I'm not going to try to hack this up, because I know it's like EMDR. Something cool. Can you explain that to me? Because that's exactly what we were talking about. But I want to get a little bit more into this because this is the new age, I feel like, of science, of healing.
Yeah, yeah. And so basically EMDR, like somatic experiencing, they're just modalities for healing trauma. And so it's less talky, we're not going to be chatting a whole bunch. So EMDR, what it does is bilateral stimulation is used to help stimulate both sides of the brain. So we're trying to get, like you have memories stuck in your head, you like just replay over and over, or you just get stuck. EMDR helps rewire that.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time you can be on that hamster wheel and not even know you're on it.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, what is it? Yeah. A Groundhog's Day even.
Yes.
Like you get stuck in these cycles. And I feel like I'm not the professional, but talking about like my own history, I feel like when you are on that hamster wheel, breaking out of that, you almost feel guilty or not good as like you're not capable or worthy of. For me, even I feel like I was caught in, not making a lot of money, not allowing myself to fully express myself. Again, we're fitting in this box, right?
Yeah.
And if I were to break out of that, there was a sense of guilt. So I wasn't truly going to enjoy it anyways. Even if, say, like I won the lottery the next day, I probably would have something bad could have happened or whatever because I wasn't healing what I needed to heal.
Yeah.
Okay. So EMDR. EMDR.
But yeah, it's just another method to help people heal trauma and heal the trapped emotion in our bodies. That's all.
That is wild. I just don't know. That's where I was going with that. I just don't know so many people that will allow themselves to understand that that's the part that needs to be healed. Yeah. Like, how do they even get there?
Yeah.
Like, what are some questions that someone at home, maybe they're on this hamster wheel, what are some questions or some things that they can do? And you don't need to answer this right now, but I'm just trying to think about this too, of like right now to identify if this therapy would be good for you. What are some indications?
So a lot of times it's if you've already done talk therapy a lot, you've already said your story over and over, but you still feel bad. That's how we know. Because talk therapy is beautiful. It provides that relationship, that empathy. A lot of trauma is healed in safe relationships also, but it's not enough for trauma.
That is interesting. You said a lot of trauma is healed in safe relationships.
Yeah.
My problem was I couldn't get into a safe relationship.
Yeah. Like, where do you get one of those?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I wasn't complete myself. So I was filling a void in a way. So how could I find the right person to help fix me if I am looking for someone to fix? I just feel like you need a lot of healing does need to come within. And maybe I don't understand it because I haven't been in a safe, and I'm not talking platonic. I've always kept platonic relationships at hand's distance.
Yeah.
Is that another thing?
A little avoidant.
Maybe I am an avoidant. Wow. But I have a very, when I was in relationships before, I have a very, so I'm an avoidant with platonic relationships. I'm attached in romantic relationships.
Get anxious.
Anxious.
Yeah.
Yes.
You got the best of both worlds.
That's not what they say out there.
But I guess just to explain, with trauma, a lot of people don't have safe relationships. You know, that's not a new thing. And so that's why the relationship with the therapist becomes a model.
Safe.
Yes,
Oh.
it's safe. If the therapist is, ethical and
Yes.
doing the right things.
Yes.
Because that's a problem too. But that's the only safe relationship sometimes people have to start.
Wow. Okay. And there are some therapists out there that I think take the easy way out. And I'm going to give one example. I was hurting so badly from a relationship. I mean, this was normal for me, but when I would get out of relationships, I would crumble. It was like I felt the worst depression of my life. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't think I was worthy. I just didn't see color in life at all.
Yeah.
And so I was desperately looking for something to heal me, and I promised myself that I would never, ever, especially having a son, ever contemplate taking my life again. It's just not on the table.
Yeah.
And nor do I want that. It just isn't, number one, that's embarrassing. For me, it was embarrassing for a very long time. And it's shameful, and I would never allow myself to do that. But I went to this therapist, and I was never really – my parents tried to take me to therapy around 16. I didn't have the greatest experience because they tried to put me on medicine. And I'm on medicine now, so I don't think anything's wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's helped me. Do I want to be on it forever? Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't, as a 16-year-old, I wasn't ready to be on medicine. I was hurting so bad. But fast forward to going to this new therapist out of this new relationship where, in my mind, he was it, and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
They're all it. They're all it.
They're all it till they're not.
Until they're definitely not.
Yeah.
And I really was looking at that point. I was like, I need to fix something inside myself. So I went to this therapist. And the whole time she told me, oh, he's a narcissist. Oh, it's that person. Oh, it's this person. And I left there thinking, I'll never go to another therapist again like that, because I don't want somebody to tell me it's not something I can fix myself.
Yeah.
I want to fix myself because that gives me the control back and the power back of my life.
Yeah.
And so I left there even worse off than I feel. Not worse. Everything I do think that has a pathway into something you're supposed to learn, or even that moment taught me what I don't want.
Sure.
So it was helpful in a way. But I can see where some therapists could, I think, bank their money on females that want to hear that, or men that want to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they're servicing you, but they're doing a disservice to you.
Right. That's what it is, because that's what we want friends for. Be my hype gal.
Yes.
Tell me I look good. Whatever. That's what friends are for. That's not what therapists are for.
Yeah.
Right. Therapists are there to validate, yes, but also to help facilitate growth.
Interesting.
We got to be real. We got to, gently call people out on their stuff.
Yes.
Right? We're not there to just agree. That's what our friends do.
Yeah, they need to be the hard, mirror in the face kind of.
But lovingly, right?
Yes.
So that people can hear it, actually.
Yeah.
Take it in.
And even normalize it. I think therapists have the ability to normalize it. I sometimes mix my words really fast, so it's like
I do that too. I make up new words in the process.
Then I talk faster, so I hope that nobody understood, or I know that you just heard me say some wacky stuff. Okay,
Delete.
yeah. But it's interesting that you said friends though too, because I think you have to be careful. I have some friends that. Honestly, I would want a friend to be like I would be to my friends. I let them fall when they fall, and I'm there when they fall, but I don't judge.
Yeah.
And then I have some friends from the past that, because they're so traumatized, they will give you advice based off of their experience, meaning just like that therapist did, oh, he's the bad one. Oh, that person's the bad one. Oh, just stop that. You need to do this, and very matter-of-factly.
Yeah.
And to me, life isn't matter-of-fact. It's a process, and not every situation. I can't think of two situations that could ever be the same.
Yeah.
You can't we're different people. We grow up differently.
Yes.
The relationships we have are differently. What's said and done behind closed doors is different. So
Yes.
So friends and advice, I get really leery about when friends come to me for advice because I'm like, I'll be your biggest supporter, and I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear either. I'm just going to let you figure it out, and I'm going to be here to be the shoulder as you go through it.
Yes.
So I think a lot of people go for validation because you get the advice that you want to hear back, or you just want somebody to tell you, okay, that person is wrong. But what does that do? That hands the responsibility off.
Right. And, as a therapist, it's, I can't think of times where I really tell people advice, unless it's like safety related. There is no like telling people what to do because first of all, who am I to tell somebody else what to do and how to live their life? I haven't walked a day in their shoes. So that's not the role of the therapist. It's to help them discover what they want to do and what's best for them.
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
You're a special one. You're special. So when a client comes to you and you start working with them, and I'm sure there's no time frame in life in general, but what can they expect when they see you a few times? Is it going to get harder for them?
Yeah. I give that prep.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the prep?
Yeah. My part of the prep is just so you know, sometimes it gets harder before it gets better. Because talking about this is hard. There's a reason why we, keep it buried down.
Yes.
Right? And so it's okay if this feels awful before it feels better. That's normal and you're not alone.
I guess that was my biggest realization that I didn't realize is that just talking about it or just understanding that it's there isn't going to heal it. You have to feel it.
Yeah.
And that was hard for me because I'm like, I've cried most of my life. Why do I need to feel this? I don't want to revisit that. I'm happy
What's that
now.
going to do?
Yes.
It's a common thing. It's like, I don't want to feel it. I've already felt it.
Yes.
But we can't think about it. That's not feeling it, right? Reading a book on it's not feeling it. Like knowing we have it, it's not feeling. Nothing is going to replace feeling and sitting with and healing.
And I think that is, quote unquote, doing the work. And I never understood that. I always thought because therapy comes with homework that you take, and that always turned me off. I'm like, the last thing I want to do is go home and write on a piece of paper about. Yes, no.
Don't sign me up for that.
You're lucky I got into the office.
Showed up.
Okay?
Yeah. No.
Now you want me to sit at home with a piece of paper? Heck no. Come on.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, it works for people. It just doesn't work for me. That's not me.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the beauty of like the vastness of the options out there because nobody's different. So again, everything that we say here is based off of what I've been through, what you've been through, and experience.
Yes. And I just want to name that too because, I would describe myself as like an integrative therapist because I don't just do one thing, right? There's certain therapists that like, I only do EMDR, or I only do somatic, or I only whatever it is. I don't know if what I'm doing is going to work for you. I don't know, right?
Wow. But and you're not there to tell them
I'm not
if it
there
is
to
or not.
decide that. But if it doesn't work, I know that I'm going to keep trying, right? I'll try something else.
That's incredible. Right. So I like that you have different strategies and techniques to really get to the root of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I could just talk for days on this stuff because now we're like getting into different methods and what that can mean for different people. Again, back to your therapy versus, traditional therapy. What would you recommend as a first start? Would it be like to call or is there like a checklist? I know we talked about the feeling, but like some people must be sitting at home like, I really just don't know what I need. I know I'm just, I don't want to do this, but you need to do it to grow.
I know. And I just wish like for all those people that they could just like call me and I could like walk them through it because it's so confusing. It really is of like, what do I need? And I've tried this and I've tried that. And it's hard because there's not one thing, but hopefully try calling some therapists, see if you connect with them. Most of us
Connection
offer
is a huge
like a
thing.
free call. Yeah, I'm like, let's do a consult call. Let's see if it even makes sense before you come in and pay. But
I love
let's
that.
connect. And if it's not the right fit, like it's not the right fit.
And it likely wouldn't
know?
be a right fit for you then either. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like birds of a feather. And I think that in all senses of the word, I think, different companies attract certain people. I think different therapists could attract certain people. There's no one right fit.
Yes. And that's what I would want kind of everybody listening to know is that like, just never give up. Because if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. But there is somebody out there who can help you.
Do you ever like go around, because I've noticed this the more healing I do, and even dating, you can sit down with somebody, and I don't say it out loud, but you can see different things of like, okay, I was broken in the same part as this person, and I know exactly what they need to do, but it's almost like a journey that they have to experience themselves. So so you do pick up on that too, like it's almost like you can see a radar.
Just notice and let it be.
Yes.
Yep.
Maybe give them a little extra tenderness because everybody is fighting about. Is there anyone? And I never finish sentences either. Is there anyone in life that has zero trauma?
No.
Like there's got to be some kind of even self battle if you wake up having everything.
Yeah, I mean there's this quote I like: trauma is a fact of life, but not a life sentence. Oh. Right? Oh. Peter Levine says that. If anybody's wondering, but yeah, we don't get through life without trauma. But we don't got to die with those trauma wounds.
Yeah, how lonely. No, you guys, trauma is not fun. Healing from trauma, like once you're past it, holy moly, it's the best feeling in the whole world. Yes. I just realized we are out of time. I cannot say, I mean, again, I would have you guys here for the whole night if I could. Thank you so much. Any lasting little spiel or hello, goodbyes you want to give the audience?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Just for anybody who's listening, know you're not alone.
Yes, and I'm going to finish off with the quote that I like to say is some conversations are just too big for small talk. Please like, subscribe, share, give us the love, tell us your stories. Honestly, I don't even like asking for likes or anything because it's not about that. It's really I want to know where everyone is at.
Yeah.
This is a common thing that we just need to come together and talk about together. So thank you. We'll see you next time.